Hi, Examine Mind 2 students. Professor Gibson here. We are in week 7, module 7 of the 7-week course. I hope that you enjoyed and learned something throughout this course. I know that I enjoyed reading your assignments. So this is the last week. Basically, have your presentation, do a presentation, a very brief outline, and then just a reflection. So a discussion board and pretty much the presentation. So this outline is just kind of, it's weird in a 7-week class to do the outline. Normally we would do it earlier to catch any issues in a full semester class. So this is going to be submitted and then your project right after that. So there's just some feedbacks. Purdue Writing Lab has been bought by Chegg. For APA stuff, I just simply go to the APA style page because it doesn't have the ads on it that Purdue does now. But that's up to you, and it has like everything in here that you would potentially need. Sometimes people do an interview. It's how to cite that, how to cite videos. Outside of the resources, some people do a fourth source that's more open. And, if you want to do a video or part of a documentary or an interview, that could be possible. So these should be done with your partners or groups. Some classes we've had 3 to a group, some we have 4, some we only have pairs of 2, just depending on how big the class is. So whatever you've worked out to this point is who you're going to work with. And some of this wording says that you're going to present both sides of the issue. I have my students do it a different way in that they're just going to talk about different aspects of the issue. So let's say they're talking about equity in healthcare. Maybe someone talks about healthcare in rural areas versus urban areas. Maybe one person in the group talks about the specific finances and statistics. One might talk about people of color or people in the LGBT community or the trans community with equity in healthcare. So I don't like to think of it as 2 sides of the issue because who would argue against equity in healthcare? But you're exploring various parts of the issue, I could say. So they end up being really interesting. A group last semester did I think it was, ended up being recycling and plastics. And they just did a lot of it in climate change, and they kind of rolled that into one topic with each of them doing their own focus on that. So it was really good. So you're working together, but understanding this is an asynchronous class. I've had students in different time zones, not to mention different continents. So you kind of do your own part independently from your partner. If you can get together and do it together, that's fantastic if both people live on campus, but that doesn't often happen. So for your annotated bib, you were doing your own sources, and this kind of goes along with that. You're just kind of presenting your sources. If you did a really thorough annotated bibliography, you should be set with your presentation. You might even have to, cut some stuff back if you found a lot of research, which is better than having to scramble and add things, right? And then no other really discussion boards this week except for the final reflection. So this is at least 300 words. Describe at least 3 things you have learned from the modules and readings. And maybe it's something that was kind of ancillary, like the main topic was, education, but in investigating education, you learned something else about the way the system works, or, be creative. And then demonstrate an application of the module content to the real world. Do this in a separate paragraph that shows how this week's material has affected you in your personal experiences. If you don't have any personal experiences, show the relationship between a current event or other cultural items. So, we talked about public education this term, and this is a tenuous relationship, but there's a lot of talk about the University of Michigan is eliminating grades for first-year students to help with mental health. So I think they're just doing their classes pass fail. So that might be an interesting topical thing to maybe relate back to education or something like that. So something topical that's going on. So the more creative the better, definitely. So have a good week and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.